Call to order the Berlin-Boylston Regional Transition School Committee. Good evening, everybody. The first item on our agenda, as always, is public comments. Christy, do we have anyone raising their hand, or do we have any public comments? I don't see any in the chat.
I do not see any in the chat either.
Okay. We will move through then to our next item, as always, is approval of payroll and payable warrants. It's been a long time since I can say they were moving around the room, but I just want to reconfirm everything's okay from that perspective. Keith, all good?
As far as I know. Yeah, Cheryl usually texts me, so I have not got a text at the moment.
Okay. It sounds like everything's moving through. Okay, next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda from August 6th, 7th, and 13th. Do I have a motion to approve our consent agenda as stated per the agenda?
So moved.
I second that.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
It's an aye for me as well. Next item on the agenda is our communication section. Do we have, before I touch on a couple of topics that I want to cover, do we have any other communications from anyone administratively and or school committee?
Nope.
Okay, cool. So I had a couple items I just wanted to sort of touch upon based on some work I've been doing and communication I've been doing with the folks in the administration office. And just to kind of, you know, really what my goal, and I've said this in many of our meetings, my goal is to ensure that, you know, I know everybody is extremely working hard in that office. And one of my goals during this whole, you know, process that we're going through is to ensure that the folks up in that building are feeling, you know, whether it's mentally or physically, health-wise, feeling good about everything. I want to address any concerns, any challenges, and just make sure that we continue to appreciate all of everything they're doing and work with them to continue to have the resources they need to put us in the best position as we move forward in the next few weeks. So, you know, one of the things I thought is it's always a good time. It always makes sense every once in a while to sort of address and state sort of some of the expectations on how we will continue to work with Jeff and the team over in that building. You know, my goal as a school committee member, as a single school committee member, and I don't look at that as any other way, but I have been put in a position to be the chair of our group, and there are some pieces to that which I do take very seriously. And one of those things is continuing to build on and ensure that our working relationship with the folks in that building is continuing to be a healthy and positive and efficient working relationship. We're only as strong as how we work as a committee with those folks, and as well with the teachers, obviously, after that. But, you know, it's really important to me. So I want to just maybe kind of readdress a couple items that I've seen sort of we're starting to get off track with a little bit. And I want to kind of reel it in, because one of the topics that I've been noticing, and Jeff and I have talked about a little bit, is workload on some of the folks up there in that building. And we want to address some of those topics. And I think, you know, at least I know in the 3+ years now that I've been on committee, you know, we really were efficient, and one of the really productive ways that we handle a lot of things is a couple items I want to cover is when we are as a committee working on our agenda for our following meetings and the meetings that are coming up. All agenda item requests and asks need to be directed through the chair and the superintendent and CC'd Christy. It shouldn't go to anybody else. We shouldn't have any other communications from any other administrative or school committee members on that. Ultimately, the agenda is decided between the superintendent and the chair of the committee. And then ultimately, as the chair, I work with Jeff to ensure that the items we're going to cover in our agenda are 1, priorities, and 2, working towards the goals that we have as a school committee. So I just want to reaffirm with everybody, please, as we're working through this process, all requests for agenda items, please filter through the chair and Jeff while CC and Christy. So that's one thing I want to make sure we just are all on the same page on. You know, Jeff and I have been talking a lot about workload in the administration building. And again, as during this time that I've been on the committee, and I've seen the previous chair work with Jeff in that group, I want to start to limit some of our asks around with some of the folks in the administration building. So moving forward, and I think this is something that we've always done up to this point, but I just want to make sure that we're continuing to focus on do this. Any asks that we have of other members in the administration building ultimately is for any type of information or workload or any type of that stuff ultimately should fall to Jeff and Jeff's decision as the leader in that building to prioritize what folks are working on and what they should be spending their time on, particularly during, you know, the important times that we're doing right now in the current workloads that everybody's under. So, you know, the next thing I want to make sure we're doing is any requests that you might have for anyone outside of Jeff in the administration building, please only send through the chair and Jeff and myself, and ultimately that decision will be left up to Jeff to decide and prioritize what kind of will be worked on and move from there. You know, I don't want to make it seem like anybody's request or information needed is any less important than anybody else's, but ultimately these folks have a very serious task at hand and a very short window to complete that, and I want to make sure that they're prioritizing the correct things during that. The last piece in terms of this I sort of wanted to cover, and we sort of had some pieces where we kind of got off base a little bit over the last couple of weeks, is when we're a school committee and we're communicating with, as it relates to anything going on as a school committee, and we are communicating, say, with other board members or other boards outside of our school committee, it's important to remember that there's a reason why we filter all that communication through the chair as a single point of contact. It's not necessarily because the chair has any more authority than any other member of the school committee, but it's important to make sure that we are streamlining the process, keeping communication consistent and succinct, and sort of not, for lack of better terms, you know, starting to have cross communication and creating scenarios where we might put ourselves in some challenges. There are particular topics out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in one of our agenda items down the road. You know, for instance, the election topic discussion. It's not just about having a single point of contact, and we'll talk. I mean, it doesn't have to just be the chair, but there's a lot of other issues that go along with stuff like that, like conflict of interest. We're all elected officials, and we shouldn't necessarily be communicating around topics like elections and election process and that type of stuff, because it could be looked at, and probably will be looked at maybe at some day if there's an issue, as a conflict of interest. So I've talked about this with legal as well, and they've recommended that we make sure we try to avoid those things. Elections are the responsibility of the towns and those town clerks. And as a school committee, we obviously can work with them, but we can talk more about that as we get to that agenda item. But for communications standpoint, we want to make sure we're using a single point of contact. Also, just from the documentation standpoint, right? We need to make sure all of our communications are being documented for that process as well. So do we have is there any questions or discussion that anyone would like to have around those topics? Hearing none. Any other communications? All right. Moving through the agenda, our next section is our report section, and I will pass it off to Jeff and team for their update on the reentry plans, and I believe specifically around the remote learning plan.
Thanks, Jim. So tonight, what we wanted to do, among other things, is talk to you about the remote plan. we submitted a full plan to the Department of Ed on the 14th, and it had in it a full-in model, it had a hybrid model, it had a remote model. We talked about the full-in model on August 4th. We voted on the hybrid model that we plan to open up schools with last week. And so we just wanted to touch on the remote plan. We have made a few changes in the remote plan. And the reason why we want to get a vote on this, on the whole, the three different models, the entire plan, is that so that we can move from one model to the next without needing to come back to the school committee for an emergency vote. And so when we put the remote plan together, we try to take into consideration a couple things. One was the expectations from the Department of Education. And they were insistent that this remote plan be much more robust than it was in the spring. In the spring, it was sort of thrown at us, and the teachers did the best they could with it. But now we've had some time to learn. We also try to take into consideration some of the input from the parents. So with that, I'll go through a few of the changes before I have the principals are going to weigh in. The first thing you'll notice that's different in the remote plan is that we asked the staff to be in the building if we needed to go to remote. The reason for that is, well, the reason we didn't do it in the spring is because in the spring we were under a closed order from the governor. So the buildings were closed. Teachers could not be in the building. Nobody could be in the building. We thought it'd be more professional for teachers to be inside the buildings. It is where they work. But more importantly, and we all know, we've all gone through this, when they're presenting to students, it can be a distraction if there's the spouse is walking in back, there's dogs barking, you know, my cat's in my face. So we thought it would be best for them to be in the building. The other thing you're going to notice is that there's a consistent platform for the delivery of instruction, and that came from the parent input. One of the strengths of our district is that our teachers are very different. They have very different ways of delivering instruction. An in-person model, that works great because it exposes our students to many different ways of learning. It doesn't play so well in a remote setting because now the parent has to be the one who has to sort of decipher these different modes of learning. So one of the issues a lot of parents had, and one of the asks that they had was, could we make the platforms, the learning platforms, the instructional platforms more uniform? So we did that. I think the principals can address that. The other thing we didn't have in the other plan that we'll have now because we have time is that parents will have a professional development that they didn't have in the spring. And that'll be professional development on the technology that we're using and how to move around to better help out the students. There'll be some online professional development, and we're also going to offer a night that parents can join us for some professional development, and that will be run by one of our teachers who's is one of the webmasters in the high school. The other thing we're going to do that we didn't do in the spring is we're going to bring our high needs students in as much as possible. I know the teachers were concerned about this and concerned that that you know those teachers and those kids may be in the building when it's not safe, but we'll make sure that it's a safe environment before we bring the high needs students back. So if there was a positive COVID-19 case, everybody would leave for a minimum of 14 days and move to remote. And then we could possibly bring the high needs students back. The point is we'll try to be in touch with them as much as possible. They're our most vulnerable students, and we should make an extra effort to be face-to-face with them as much as we can. And it won't be until we get into this that we're going to know what that looks like. we'll have, the principals have worked out at the elementary school a schedule for specials. And so those will be twice a week. There's also going to be included, so this time around, the MASC has introduced some policies that are specific to COVID-19. And I know Susan's going to talk about those later, but it's not just a policy, it's the application of those policies in the school. So the principals right now, so what we plan to do, once we start getting through this, all of these policies, attach those policies as an addendum, but also to include in the plan, the application of those policies in the schools. And so the principals are working on that right now, taking those plans and then translating them into the policy. The other thing that we made sure, that the principals made sure they did, was to make sure there was some consistency in all three plans. One of the things is these schedules, that the schedule would be similar, whether it's a remote plan or hybrid or a full in. And again, this is something that parents talked about, and it's going to make the process more consistent if we have to switch from one model to the next. We will post that. Parents asked to see. One of the things they said is, you know, we'd really like to see what a day in the life of a student's going to look like, especially in the hybrid model, because that's what we're going to open with. And it's a little confusing to parents because there's one cohort, there's another cohort, and there's this other day in the middle. So what does that all look like? So one of the things we've asked the principals to do is put together a document for each school, a day in the life, a week in the life of a student in the hybrid model that will, we're going to post. We'll have it in our update next week. But I've asked them if they would each report out on it today for the committee, so you can see what this is going to look like, and you can get a better idea of what a day in the life of our students in the hybrid model is going to look like. Any of you want to go first? I know Ace and John had some kind of, did you have slides and things you wanted to show and fireworks and stuff?
Diane has one too, and a talking robot, I think. And
Okay.
I'm going to share screen. Hold on. And I think, Diane, yours is up first. Yeah. Everybody can see that, right?
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Ace. So this is, and again, some of this is a work in progress. There are a few things that do have to be tweaked, so I'll explain that as I get to it. So go to the next slide, Ace. So with our models, as you saw in the plan, the hybrid model brings two cohorts into the building, and they alternate being in person and being remote. So this is just taking you through sort of what cohort A would be. So cohort A, or half of our student population, would be in person on Monday and Tuesday, while cohort B would be remote. And so we're looking at students arriving between 7:20 and 7:35. They're going to be entering through assigned entrances while practicing social distancing, so that not all of the students are entering at once through only the front entrances. We'll also use the side entrances as well to be able to spread people out. Once students get into the building, they'll wash or sanitize their hands upon entrance. Obviously, in the bathrooms, we also will have sanitizers hung up on the hallway walls, and there'll also be hand sanitizer in every room in the building. At that point, students will report to their first period class that day. And in the buildings, the desks are 6 feet apart. Students can keep their belongings next to the desks and on the chairs. We will not be using lockers for the 2020-2021 school year. We'll begin the day with morning announcements, and classes will begin. So on Monday, we will have 4 periods per day. And the reason why we did this was so that when students were in person, we were limiting the amount of transitions and therefore the amount of contact within the hallways. So on Mondays, the periods will be periods 1 through 4. And on Tuesday will be periods 5 through 7. And the last block of the day on Tuesdays will be a support block, which we are still working on what exactly that will look like. Next
Diane,
slide.
could I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
Do all students have a place they're supposed to be during that support block?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. And so classes are 90 minutes long, and transition times will be staggered. So that means that, you know, we're going to shut the bells off. So it doesn't mean that the bell's going to ring and everybody is going to go into the hallway. We're going to shut the bells off and stagger our dismissals. And Sally and I will be working with the teachers during those first 10 days to develop a plan within their hallway to be able to stagger those times. And travel throughout hallways will be one way and marked accordingly, as you can see by my picture. And so we have already figured that out. Obviously, the common spaces, you know, the hallways in the middle school foyer, the high school foyer, as well as the cafeteria will be a two-way, but there will be lanes marking where to go and where to stay so people aren't bumping into or getting close to one another. All of our mass breaks, weather permitting, will be outside, and we'll be going over protocols and procedures for all of our students, our faculty, and staff regarding appropriate ways to take masks off, make sure you hand wash or sanitize before and after. We also are looking at a plan for you know, something that students can do with their masks while they're on their mask break, so they're not holding them in their hands. So we'll be working on that as well. Lunch, we'll be setting up a schedule. So again, there's hand washing and sanitizing before and after lunch. We will still have 3 lunches, even with half of the students in the building. And seating for lunch will be in one of 3 locations, either outside under the tents, the cafeteria, or the gymnasium. And these will be set up so everybody is facing the same way. We'll have the spaces designated for students to line up 6 feet apart to get their meals if they are choosing to get their meals through the cafeteria. And dismissal will be staggered, and students will exit out our assigned exits at the end of the day. And we will do this via announcements. We'll have students who drive go first, followed by all of the buses, but the buses will be called one at a time, similar to the elementary schools. And then we will have parent pickup and drop off, but that will be at a specific time. Parents will not be allowed to wait in their typical lane that they usually are waiting about 1:45 for a 2:15 pickup. So that will be limited to limit the amount of people out and on the campus at the same time. And Wednesdays, so for everyone, and this goes across the district, Wednesdays will be remote for all. With this is a little bit of a change, and this is done because at the middle high school, the scheduling is extremely difficult. And we want to ensure that all of our classes, even those classes that meet every other day, by the end of all this, that there is some equality. So on Wednesday, students will follow their full 7-period schedule. So the periods will be 48 minutes long. And we're still working with this with the teachers, but students will participate in their classes, either asynchronous or synchronous, and or work on assignments posted on Google Classroom. We'll also be scheduling times on Wednesdays for virtual class meetings where the whole class gets together in Google Meet. Sally and I will also schedule meetings with students so that we can get an idea of how they feel about how things are going. And also for teacher check-ins, extra support, could be group work, breakout meetings that teachers have set up for their students to work on group projects virtually. And then students will also be participating in SEL activities.
Diane, could I ask a question there?
Sure.
On the second bullet there, is it possible that a student might that day have all asynchronous classes? Did that happen?
I don't know, to be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that because it honestly depends on a student's schedule as to, what classes they have and if it's an even day or an odd day.
Okay, so I'm just trying to picture it from a student perspective. So they might look at their Wednesday, they'll see the lineup of what they're doing that day, right? They'll see,
Correct.
oh, these 3 classes are meeting synchronously and these 4 classes are not, something like that. And then
So everything will be posted in Google Classroom. So they just go on Google Classroom, if period 1 is English with Mr. Whitehead, the student has their schedule and will click on Mr. Whitehead and be able to see the assignment. I think also, the teachers, will be communicating with the students, whether it's the Thursday, Friday group for next week or the Monday, Tuesday group for the remainder of the week as to what students can expect moving forward.
Okay.
And so, again, it's going to be different, for every student.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure. Next one, Ace. And then Thursday, Friday for that cohort A. And again, students will begin with a virtual announcement and classes will begin with students following the Thursday period 1 through 4 and Friday period 5 through 7 and support block schedule, but they will all be remote. And students will participate in their classes either asynchronous or synchronous through Google Meet and or work assignments posted on Google Classroom. So again, somewhat similar to Wednesdays, but we're really trying to have Wednesdays be more of a support time and extra assistant and small group meetings for the classes, and potentially even times for the entire class, both cohorts to get together on a Google Meet. So Thursday, Friday, that's an example of the remote learning. So whether you're in front of your teacher live in person or whether you are remote, your day begins the same time and your day ends the same time. Next one, Ace. And so cohort B is just really the opposite of that. So when cohort A is in the building on Monday and Tuesdays, cohort B will be remote. Everybody will be remote on Wednesdays. And when cohort A is remote on Thursdays and Fridays, cohort B will be live and in person. And so the schedule that you see, regardless of which, mode we are in, we are going to be following the exact same schedule. So even, when and if we return to a full return this year, we will still follow the same schedule.
Diane, if teachers are teaching cohort A on Monday and Tuesday, how would they offer synchronous sessions with their students in cohort B?
So that is something that we are trying to work out and figure out. We do have to We're working with legal counsel to see what type of platform, if any, we can have our remote learners be able to feed into the classroom while the
Okay,
the
so,
other students who are live. But again, that is something that we're working on, and will obviously take the lead of our legal counsel.
so it wouldn't be a separate synchronous session just for cohort B.
No, correct.
Listen, there are some privacy issues. If I could just jump in, there are some privacy issues around a camera being in a room.
Yeah.
It's not just the camera, it's also the audio part. And I know from webinars with online, and a few teachers in other districts and a superintendent told me that they were not able to do that. But I'm also talking to Russ about it to see if there's something we can do, because enough people have said to me that it can be done. So this is something we're going to check into, because if we can do it, if there is a way to do it, if there's a way to get, maybe sign-offs or something like that, then it does make it it makes it a better situation, because those students who are home can at least be in the classroom virtually. So we've been talking to Russ about it, so I should have something pretty soon on it. Russ called right before the meeting. I called him today, but I had to get on with the meeting. So I'll have something shortly on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Is that it, Ace? I believe.
If so,
Okay.
for that.
Any other questions at all?
I had a question about Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
If cohort A is learning on Monday and Tuesday, but cohort B hasn't yet learned what was on Monday and Tuesday, I'm just thinking about the teachers on that Wednesday. They can't really continue because the second group hasn't seen it yet.
That's not necessarily true that they haven't seen it yet. They may see it in a different way.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay. But, they will be, as close to in sync as possible. And I think that's why, so many of our teachers are are hoping for the ability to, have those students who are online, at least, present virtually for at least a lecture portion of the class. But so, because otherwise you would only get through half of the curriculum if you had to wait.
That's what I was.
So it'll just look a little bit different.
Thanks, Diane. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And just to piggyback on that question before we get into the elementary, one of the things that we've been talking about, not with the teachers that we've talked to, is about the idea of flipped learning. And so the asynchronous opportunities or videos that would typically, not that we have teachers that lecture a whole lot, but that would be the instructional component. And then there'd be some activities that would assess kids' understanding. So then when they're back in the building, now the teacher can work with those small groups and either extend or remediate, while that other cohort is seeing those asynchronous lessons and completing those activities. So that's one of the things that things we're talking about in terms of ways to handle that same problem. So hopefully everybody sees a week in elementary hybrid. We've just started working on this at this afternoon's this presentation, so it's still very much a rough draft. And John and I both have different ones, but seeing as you guys don't want to see almost identical slides twice tonight, we're gonna, I threw the Blue Jay on here, and we're gonna go with my draft first.
Anyways.
Yeah. So we're gonna say it's a hypothetical student in cohort A. We will follow the same cohort model as Tohonto, and for all the parents listening out there, I've tried to get it out there. Cohorts will be out by Friday at the latest. So those are coming. Mrs. Hayden was stuffing envelopes today, so they'll be coming out soon. On a typical day, Monday and Tuesday, students will arrive between 8:20 and 8:40. I'm thinking as we get this underway, we're going to be able to shorten that time frame, but we're trying to leave a good long chunk And immediately they'll start practicing social distancing. We've already got stickers on the floor, 6 feet apart, so the kids can kind of get an idea. It's going to be really hard, especially in those lower grades, for kids to maintain that distance. So we've got visual reminders. We also noticed they're about 2 feet away from the wall, so hopefully those little arms won't reach over, drag along the walls, because that is a common occurrence, again, in the elementary school, and it's a way to transmit germs. John, stop me. I'll do a couple and then I'll pass over.
Yeah, sounds good.
Once students arrive in the classroom, they'll wash, sanitize their hands. Upon entrance, every room has their own hand sanitizer. Here's an example, a picture of desks about 6 feet apart. I'm encouraging staff to have kids put backpacks and jackets over their seats. All those desks are empty so they can store materials in there as well. Rather than send kids out to cubbies one at a time and lose additional instructional hours. That's going to be the recommendation. We'll start the day at 8:40. Birthdays will also highlight socially distant activities for kids to do at recess, so they can start thinking about what that will look like, and teachers can answer questions. And then we'll move right into the academics. For the purpose of this exercise, I just picked ELA to start in the morning. It's not to say that someone might not choose to do social studies, science, or math. This is more to just paint a picture. After, within an hour's time, a mask break will be assigned. Again, similar to Tohoto, those are going to take place outside whenever possible, with more than 6 feet distance. And hands will be washed or hand sanitized before and after the mask break. So anytime that they're handling the masks, we're making sure that they're not cross-contaminating.
Sure. Specialists, and this is going to be true, right? All of these things are true essentially in both schools. Specialists for the kids this year, as we're in this hybrid model, will be done in classrooms. As much as possible, we're encouraging people to do those specials outside. It's better for the kids. It's another chance to do a mask break. And it gives the teachers a little space to work. The specials they return to, our hypothetical student will return to academics. Again, it says ELA, but it's whatever the teacher thinks is best. And then midday, we do lunch. I think both buildings, Ace, correct me if I'm wrong, are doing 3 lunches. We're both using our gymnasiums. And Ace has, there you go, there's the picture. Ace has tables set up. I'll have desks set up, but very similarly, they're all single students all facing one way, and that just comes out of the guidance we're getting from the Department of Education. And as you know, in ACE's model, students will be dismissed from lunch to recess. In Berlin, we do recess before lunch, but it's essentially the same order. Kids will wash their hands before recess and after recess coming into lunch, and then after lunch going back to class.
Kind of hard to imagine kids sitting in there. I'm just picturing those kids in those front tables where they're facing the wall's right in front of them. I can't imagine that they're going to spend their time turned around and trying to talk with somebody.
It's like the hardest part. It's, every time I visualize, a lot of things are just going to look smaller, but okay. But when I think about lunch, it makes my heart heavy.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's some niceties, amusements, or something that can be put at that.
Both schools do stuff like that. And of course, ACE's kids will be revved up to go outside. And we tend to play a lot of games at lunch because it's before they go back to class.
Right.
But still sitting alone at a table is going to be a change. All the things we like to teach kids, sharing and communicating and talking with friends and making plans. A lot of that is going to be much harder to do for the next few months.
Even as an adult, we would have trouble doing that. I hope you continue to think about what might be at that table, even if it was underneath plastic, wrap some puzzles and games or something that might be of interest, just to, I would be like prison otherwise, I think.
Yeah, and somebody commented, we are looking at and talking about lunch outside. There are some challenges to taking food outside, one of which is bees. But it's, anything we can do to make this a little better, we're going to try.
Yeah. One of the things that came up in my group was we're exploring the ability to play music in there. Try age appropriate music, because those 4th and 5th graders will want to listen to less than age appropriate. But
Yeah, it's a good idea.
not make it prison-like or institutional, but at the same time making sure that we're doing everything we can to maintain safety. So John, I'll jump in. Once at recess, whether they go before or after, there'll be assigned spaces on the playground, so that we can monitor for commingling. Teachers will help facilitate some social distant games, and also be able to monitor closely. Once they return to class, they'll again wash and sanitize, and then we'll go right back into academics. In this case, I picked math. We'll do that for about an hour before we offer another mask break, again with the intention of being outside, following the same protocol and procedure where the kids are washing their hands before and after. They'll return and finish up the academics till dismissal. We're initially starting dismissal at 2:40, again to see how that shakes out. Both of us have some different dismissal and arrival procedures from what we've had in the past, but we're going to share those out individually to parents when we get closer to the day. Again, though, similar to Tohoto, limiting the amount of kids that are traveling through single entrance.
Wednesdays are remote day, and it looks a little different from the middle high school. Classes will start the day at the usual time, and Ace has been doing a virtual announcement, and I'm going to finally have to follow his fabulous lead. I lost another bet there. And our goal is to have all the classes come together on that day, the A cohort and the B cohort, for a synchronous lesson, probably focused on caring schools. We're real concerned about how kids are going to come back, the state that they're going to come back in, how comfortable they're going to be, what's happened at home. I think there's a lot that's going to have to be unpacked as we start the school year. A lot of social rules that are going to have to be relearned, most likely. And that'll be a place to kind of talk about some of those. It's also a time that Nurse Anna in my school can talk about, mask hygiene and how to wash your hands and a lot of those medical things. Students will, and this is where we're a little different from high school, the lessons will be asynchronous, because what's going to happen is our goal is for teachers to introduce concepts through video and have kids at home practice those skills so that when they get back to school, teachers can give direct feedback around the work the kids have already done. That's going to be a moving target and kind of a goal to be chased, but I think it's worthy of our efforts. Specialists, art, music, and PE will provide synchronous activities in the morning to give parents and kids something to do. There'll be a break for lunchtime, and then we go back to some of those pre-recorded lessons in the afternoon. While all that's happening, teachers, classroom teachers, special educators, the specialists as well, will be preparing those asynchronous, those videotaped, not that they're videotaped anymore, but those recorded lessons so that they can be used Thursday, Friday, or Monday and Tuesday. That's the importance of Wednesday for us. Mr. Thompson.
So then on Thursday and Friday, this same student in cohort A will begin their day again at 8:40 with virtual announcements, just to maintain routine, and they'll watch some asynchronous instruction, complete some related work that'll assess their learning. We've also been able to access this online program, Freckle. I've had some teachers use it in the past. They've always loved it. I know that Berlin has been pretty active in the last year or two. So we were able to purchase that, and that's an online supplemental piece. It can act as assessment, instructional piece, and honestly, the kids love it. So there's a reinforcement to it as well. I believe they earn points or coins or tokens or something.
Yeah, depends on their age. They're great.
Yeah. And I'm all about that. So, we'll maintain some specialist asynchronous activities because they will be, of course, teaching classes. And then we'll have the lunch and movement break or recess scheduled in, and then before moving in, and then finishing up again with Freckle.
Ace, those previously recorded asynchronous lessons, are they necessarily with their classroom teacher, or might they be from other sources on the internet? Or
So when I've talked with the teachers that I've talked to, I'm going to put a high emphasis on like created by ourselves. That being said, it might not be their own homeroom teacher. There's an opportunity for the grade levels to work together and kind of and facilitate, because if one person is doing a video on fractions, I always pick on fractions,
Yeah.
that can be something shared. But I think there's a lot to be gained by the students hearing the voices of the teachers in the building. All that being said, sometimes you find the amazing, perfect resource that you couldn't recreate in a million years. So there will be, I'm sure that there'll be some of that, but the focus will be on teacher driven.
Right. There's a lot of resources right in the math and reading programs that we're currently using.
Sure.
And I'm sure teachers will use that as well.
okay, thank you.
I think that's the last slide.
Ace or anybody, how much involvement did teachers have in putting together some of these hybrid scenarios, and as we talked about the cohort scenarios, how much involvement was there teacher participation?
So I've had some conversations with some of the teachers, two of the teachers in specific about, we're still we're working through what that's going to look like, what the planning for that's going to look like. So, and some of this is also generated out of the negotiation process that I wasn't a part of, but took place.
At Tohoto, this, for the most part, a good 90% of this schedule was developed by the reentry committee, which did include some of our faculty, staff, as well as Sally and myself. As I said, we still have some more tweaking to do, especially with, what Wednesdays will look like. But I think we're pretty pleased with the schedule because it hopefully will flow nicely depending upon, what mode we are in.
Okay.
Diane, there is a question in chat asking about, just clarifying, are students going to be just in front of their core class teachers one time a week for 90 minutes?
Yes. So typically our, we have 48-minute periods. So with the block, it's going to be about 90. So it's almost double of what a typical period would look like in a typical year. One of the concerns that we had from last spring was the fact that it was very difficult for both teachers as well as students and parents to juggle 7 periods in one day. That's a lot of transition.
Right.
And obviously, in order to make it safer when people are in the building, we needed to limit the amount of transition as well. So it's equivalent to about a typical 2 period.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
When we talk about levels of synchronous versus asynchronous time and learning, what consideration or challenges were had as it relates to the need for maybe higher need students to have a greater amount of synchronous learning versus asynchronous, regardless of the model that we're in?
So
just in general, as you can answer the specifics and the principals can do the specifics, but that was a directive from the state, really, that even if you were going to be remote, the expectation from the state was that the high need students be in as much as possible. So when these were developed, they were developed with that in mind. So that's not something that we really, that came to us as an expectation from the state. Ace, did you want to expand on it, how it applies in your school?
So timing is everything, because John, Karen, Judy Valancourt and I met today, and we were discussing, the students that meet the criteria for high needs, and those are the students that we're having discussions around having the opportunity to be present in the building more frequently.
Okay. And do you see that being something that potentially evolves as we move back and forth from different plans, and as we evaluate and determine our effectiveness in some of those plans? Do you see that as an area that might evolve over the year?
I think all of this is going to evolve. We don't know what it looks like, and but again, our emphasis will be to get those students in the building. They're the ones who suffer the most by not having a teacher in front of them, even for part of a day. So if it's not possible to get them in a whole day, you get them in for part of a day. They really need that connection. So I'm sure it'll evolve. I don't think anybody knows how yet.
Okay. I had another question. If this is not specifically for ACE, but he brought it up, you mentioned the cohort selection and that coming out soon. And we touched upon it briefly, I think, or Jeff or someone touched upon it briefly, as doing our best. Obviously, we have a number of families with multiple, age groups and students in a number of the communities and in the different schools. Can you just give a little insight into the process used to determine sort of the cohorts and any of the challenges that might have been had during that, particularly as relates to, say, siblings and that type stuff, or different schools?
Sure. I think, we all kind of came at it from our own, unique perspective that meets the needs of, diverse communities. So how we started in Berlin looks different than how we started in Boylston, and different than how it looks in Tohoto. I think the end results, though, is I feel pretty confident that we're able to get all the siblings in the same cohort, because we worked together. We had some pretty strong communication. And so I feel like that. I think the other components that were factored in at parts, I've looked at geography a little bit and bus routes. I also do the impact on special needs students and how we can make sure that they're able to access the supports they need. Especially you start thinking about, we've got some support staff, some related service providers that travel between 3 buildings. And so if you have an OT that has to get to all 3 buildings, but has to see a kid twice a week for 30 minutes, how do we make sure that those 2 days are the days that she's going to be in the building? So it was logistically, it was harrowing. Can I say that? I feel pretty good about where we're at in it, but I also, I anticipate getting feedback from parents about it. I did have quite a few parents reach out and making requests. You can only take requests so far, because the priority was for siblings and for make sure that the needs of kids were met. So I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. I suspect all of your email inboxes will be full after these letters go out on Friday, but yeah, it does. I just was interested because I'm sure it wasn't an easy task. So I just wanted to see if there was any challenges or not, but thank you.
Okay.
Jeff, you made mention to, I was just thinking you made mention to state guidance in one area, particularly around the higher needs students. And I was thinking back to the earlier conversation around the legalities wrapped into the video and whatnot. And there seems to be a lot of questions and thoughts around, you know, can't really understand why video can be done at home, but not in the classroom, X, Y, and Z. And I was thinking about this because, you know, when I look at some of the feedback and discussion around this in MASC, that this is an area where there's not a lot of state guidance, right? So because of their drive to get as much in-learning person done as possible, they're not really providing a lot of guidance around there, which is why I think it's important that you guys, do work with legal to make sure we address all these things. Because I just think about it, I think of a traditional regular year where I think we have to sign off, right? If we want a picture of our kid to be on the website or save, you know, and I just think of like that type stuff. Like there's a lot of legalities, particularly when it comes to being in the buildings around that. So I wish it was as simple as just throwing a camera on, but it's not. And you know, it stinks that we're not getting any guidance from the state or help with that stuff, or even, you know, maybe some leniency, right? Maybe backing off it a little bit to make an effort to simplify some of these things and help in some of these processes. We're not getting that from the state in this particular case. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and you know, it's really not simple because, you know, if you have everybody in Zoom, like this meeting, for example, if somebody doesn't like something, you know, they can, you know, any of the people who watch, they just turn it off. But when you have a captive audience in front of you, you have half the students there and they can't go anywhere. And then two students interact with each other, and, you know, parent watching on the Zoom or listening on the Zoom happens to just hear something. They don't know what happened before. They don't know how the teacher reacted to the situation. And I can see how it could be, you could run into a problem where they hear little Johnny say something, and then they say, well, you know what, somebody was being bullied in that class and the teacher didn't say anything or they didn't react. So I could see how it'd be a problem. There may be, like I said, I'm gonna get the definitive word from Russ around it. Maybe there's some sign-offs we can do. It would make it easier for the teachers and the students if we could do that. Certainly the amount of you know, face-to-face instruction would increase. But as you can see, as they went through this, and first of all, I want to just thank the principals. They've done a great job of putting that together. That stuff will be posted tomorrow, and it will be in our update. Our next update will be starting our weekly updates on next Wednesday, and that will be in there. And I know the parents have asked for it. But as you can see, things are going to look a lot different than they usually look. And well, one of the things that's really common here is that there is consistency in the planning, and that's especially important for parents, so they know exactly what's going to happen each day. That was a big issue in the spring, and hopefully, you know, we've made our decision on how we're going to open the schools, and hopefully, you know, we can learn some good things from this. You know, and I go by these restaurants, they have all this outdoor seating, and I think, well, how come they didn't do that before? How come there had to be a pandemic for them to do that in the warm weather? Now they all have it. So I'm hoping that we can find something out of this that stays. You know, we've been doing the same things forever, and so hopefully, you know, we can make something good out of a not great situation. Carol or Karen, did you want to weigh in on anything on the remote plan? I know you did some final edits on it a few days ago.
Actually, I think you covered it pretty well. I can't think of anything else. Can you, Carol?
No, I can't either. Karen and I went back over each of the plans and tried to make sure they were, we had the same information as much as possible in all three of the plans, yet respected the differences in each of them. And we were happy to submit those last Thursday to the Department of Ed. So we haven't heard anything back yet, so that's a good sign.
So it was a good sign. There are a couple of things that aren't in the plan that we are still working on with the teachers, and we're working on with Russ. And one of them is the issue of of teachers bringing their children to school. So there are two pieces of this. One piece is legislation that the Department of Ed is working on with the governor to relax the school choice laws, so that if a teacher had a student and they didn't have childcare and their school maybe is all remote, they would have an option to enroll them in our schools temporarily, just for a certain period of time. So that's a legislative thing, we're working on that. There's also the issue teachers have expressed about having the ones who didn't have childcare to bring their children in during professional development when our students are not in the building. And of course, there's all kinds of insurance issues with that. So we're working through that piece. I don't have a problem with it. I talked to the principals. They also do not have an issue with it. So they'd have to be, it would require an MOU that Russ would write up, that the school committee would vote on. So I'm going to work with him. That's the other issue I needed to talk with him tonight. So there are other few things that, even though we're asking you to vote on it tonight, there will be some pieces of this that sort of trickle in that we'll keep you posted on. But other than that, I think we've covered everything in our remote plan, a hybrid plan, and our full-in plan. There's pretty much everything in that packet that was submitted.
First, a process question, Jim. Can the questions and suggestions that are coming in through the chat and the Q&A be, if they're not responded to tonight, can they at least be copied and passed on to administration and Jeff for consideration after the meeting?
Yes, Susan, I've already copied them down and I have a running list for Jeff.
Great, thank you.
So I was just, you beat me to my own punch there, Susan. I was about to address that. We have a busy agenda tonight, so I want to try to keep on track as much as possible, and all the questions are important. And all information, I've seen in the chat, there's a number of folks who want to share some information, particularly around, the live streaming. All that information is important to be shared. And yes, if you have it, please send it along. Question, Jeff, what's your recommendation? Questions that folks have, some of the questions, and why I don't, necessarily want to get into the questions specifically this evening, is some of the questions are very, say, building specific, right? Cohort model specific, high school, middle school, elementary schools. What's your recommendation for those folks who have questions specific? Is it to email the principals? Are you going to manage that through administration offices? What is your recommendation from that?
If they just send them all to me, because I've been getting questions like that, and I either answer them or I send them off to the directors or the principals. So if they send all the questions to me, I will just decide who answers them. We'll go that way.
So, I'm just trying to understand, Jeff, are you saying, we just walked through a day in a life of a student in a hybrid model, right? And I appreciate the principals putting those together. Found that helpful to just walk through that a little bit. Are you saying, Jeff, now that, are we having further discussion about their fully remote and fully in-person models?
Unless you have a question, we weren't planning on going over them. We presented the full in on August 4th. And we presented the hybrid last week that you voted on.
But what about the fully remote?
Well, that's what we talked about tonight. And they talked about the hybrid model only in reference to the fact that parents wanted to see what we were going to open with. That's why I included it there. But I kind of combined two things here. My bullet points that I highlighted were just changes to the remote plan. They haven't changed all that much since the first one we presented, or the first one that was in the plan. But the only thing I can tell you is that that day in the life scenario, that would apply in the remote too, just not the synchronous in front of teachers part. So they would keep that same schedule. They would contact kids in the same kind of sequence as they would in the hybrid.
So 5 days a week instead of 2.
Yeah, yes. I think opening in a hybrid will be good. It'll give us a good feel for what a full in will be. It'll give us a feel for any changes we would have to make to a remote plan. And if we have to go to a remote, which is probably likely at some point here, they will already have worked in it, have some experience with it. So I think there'll probably be some changes along the way. Again, they were in remote in the spring, but it's going to look different here because now they have to follow a schedule, and so there might have to be some changes to that. It's a little easier in the spring to change on the fly because teachers were doing things individually, and we were okay with that. This will be a little different. If there are changes that need to be made in a remote plan, they're going to have to be made systemically. You can't be just one teacher making the change. It'd have to be something that the administration works on with the teachers. So,
what's the mechanism for gathering parent input on how this is all going, particularly during the first month that it's rolling out?
Well, so far they haven't had a problem contacting me, giving me input. So I suppose that would be part of it. Other than that, I think parents are pretty good at contacting the buildings. So I would really encourage you to think of other ways to solicit input broadly, and not to rely on people who are unhappy with something, something's not going well, as the only, and also those people who are most, know how to read the system the best. Maybe there are people who don't know how to navigate the system in the same way. I think it's important to solicit input from everybody, and to make sure you're hearing from the breadth of people you're serving. And so I'd like to encourage you to think of a way to not rely on people to be banging on your door. Well, we'll look into it. It's a big ask. You're pretty much asking us to change the way the world works, but we'll look into it. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Jim, may I make an observation?
Please.
So I'm not a parent in the school community. So my observation is, just as a school committee member who has been a school administrator, and thinking about what I've seen and heard, not just tonight, but previously as well. The thing I like a lot about what I heard tonight is that I have a very clear sense that there is actually a plan. There is actually a schedule, and that the hybrid model, to its best ability, is trying to simulate a school day, a school week, the school experience. When I was sitting here tonight, I was thinking, gosh, they've done a pretty good job making it feel like I'm in school. And that's, in my mind, I think that's really amazing. And the fact that I think students will feel like they're in school. And I know Susan mentioned about, sitting in the cafeteria facing the wall and sitting and staring at other children's backs. So I have a second comment. And while I understand what she's talking about, you know, the reality is this is how it is for everyone. Adults, children, parents, grandparents. We're all finding ourselves in very awkward and uncomfortable situations. If you've gone to a physician's office anytime in the last 3 months, it's like an out-of-body experience. And so while I don't want to diminish that these are little kids, you know, the reality is that's what we're faced with. And our choices are limited because they can't touch anything. We can't have games and puzzles and things for them to do because then they have to touch them and we have to clean them and you have to worry about who's had them. So it is a sterile environment. It absolutely is a sterile environment. And I'm sure everyone's going to work hard to make it seem less sterile than it is, but the bottom line is it is a sterile environment. And we just, you know, and I deal with my own grandchildren, it's that way. It's a sterile environment. And it will end someday. But I want to thank, you know, all of you for creating what feels like a real school day, school weeks, and that, you know, you're dealing with the nuts and bolts and details in thoughtful ways. So thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Cliff. That was very, very well put. I think they did do a good job of making sure that it's as normal as a school day as possible here. So, and you're right, this will be over at some point. I think that's all we have for the remote plan.
Are you planning anything on the agenda around the remote learning option, the learning platform?
You know, we didn't include that. That, you mean for students who did not choose to do the hybrid, is that what you're talking about? You know, we didn't include that. We should have. We do have a platform. I guess we can talk about it a little bit. We didn't have it planned here. We can talk about it a little when we do the response, the survey.
Yeah, good.
But we should have planned that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself because we're expected to vote on it later on in the meeting. It's like, well, what are we voting on?
Well, you're voting on.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. We're not voting tonight on the Department of Education remote model.
Correct. You're voting on this
You're
plan.
being asked to vote on tonight. You're being asked to vote on the plan that we will use if the Boylston district is put into a remote learning option. That is, we're not voting on.
Oh.
Okay, thanks for that clarification because I did not understand that.
No, because it says platform on the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not what we're voting on tonight.
Okay, I think the word platform threw me off.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have a question, and it's a little bit unrelated, but I know it's on a lot of kids' minds. So I know we were talking about how, is it possible it's Friday when the cohorts will be released? Is that for all schools? And then my other question is, because I have a rabid 10th grader who's going to ask me, how will we be contacted to find out who's in the cohort? Like what cohort they're in? Are you releasing like who's in cohort A, who's in cohort B? Am I understanding that correctly?
So on the elementary level, we're sending letters to every individual family, and it'll only include what cohort those children belong in.
Right.
Confidentiality reasons, we can't share like everybody that's in the class or everybody that's in that cohort.
Really?
So that's what it's gonna look like in the elementary level.
Right. So when we say we're releasing them on Friday, you know, we're entrusting them to the postal service. So at some point, people will get that envelope in the mail.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
At the middle
Put
high.
it in on Thursday.
Yeah.
At the middle high school, we'll be releasing that information in our STAG Spotlight newsletter.
Excellent. Thank you, Diane.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of phone calls between these kids to find out what cohorts they're in. Probably be easy to send a checklist out. They could just check all their buddies.
Are you expecting at any point that those cohorts might change? Not anytime during the year, if we stayed in hybrid all year?
I hope not.
You know what the problem is, Susan? We spend so much time aligning siblings, and it's not so hard when you do just your building, but when my 4th and 5th graders have 7th and 8th grade
Right,
siblings
right.
to Honto, you pull it one, they just all fall apart.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the efforts that people described earlier to try to get cohorts together at some point so that they still feel connected with their entire class and their friends in the other cohort. So I think that's good planning and considerate of how students might be thinking.
You know, I want to get back to quickly, Jeff, just sort of thinking as we were talking about some of the cohort stuff. We talk about back to the remote learning plan, the remote learning resources for students or families that will choose to not enroll their students in the hybrid plan. Why I think it's important, and to Cliff's point, right? I think it's important for us to get that. And I don't know if just quickly touching on it tonight's the best idea, or if rethinking this tomorrow and getting the right, correct information out. I don't want to have you speak to that tonight if it's not going to be necessarily the correct information. If you've got it, great. But I think it's important that we get that information in the hands of our parents and families as it relates to what resources we as a district will be making available to them. Because, as much as, and again, I've talked about this in our first meeting when we started talking about these plans, that's a personal family decision. And we can provide the information as it relates to what the resources are going to be available, but it will be up to those families to understand and evaluate and know what resources can be available before they make their decisions as to whether or not they're going to enroll their students and have them be part of that hybrid plan. So to Cliff's point, I think it's important that we get that information out to parents as soon as possible. So I do think that should be a priority, but my feeling on that is some information that needs to be looked at individually from an individual family perspective, and their individual families, not necessarily 100% the responsibility of the school district. But
we did send it out last week. We sent it out the same day as the survey. We sent it out. We sent the survey out in the morning. We sent the link to Edgenuity out at, I think Paul released it at 7 o'clock. We were having a few issues, but we finally got it out at 7. So parents, because we got questions from parents, we thought we'd be able to send them out at the same time, but again, we had some issues, and we got stuck getting some questions from parents. We can't make a choice if we don't see what you've decided on. So we did get that out at 7 o'clock, and parents have had a chance to take a look at it. One of the things these companies do is sometimes they give you just a practice link so you can go on. I know Carol has tried, and I've tried to get in touch with the company. Just trying to get in touch with those reps these days, almost impossible. We'll continue to do that, but we did send the information out.
Well, the families that opt for that learning management system, it's still, I mean, will those students have opportunities to interact in any ways with their peers who are in the district option, either through any of the extracurricular activities or through class meetings or any other way?
Well, we're hoping they are. I mean, I know that question has come up of if my student is in remote, can they still participate in school in extracurricular activities? You know, it's an interesting question that they, you know, that they want to stay home, but they want to participate in that. Still, I think it is legitimate. There are some activities in which they couldn't because they'd have to be in school during the day, really. And then there's other activities like sports, for example. I can't really see saying no to a student who still wants to participate in sports, because I think, you know, it just hurts the student. They still need some connection with the school, and we should provide that. So we'll be going through activities. There are some of them, especially at the high school, where they really do need to be in school. And if they want to be an officer, for example, and student council, it requires them to be in school. So there are some activities they will not be able to participate in, and there's some that they will. So we're going to try our best to make sure they can participate in as many extracurricular activities as possible, including sports, which is a whole other issue.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I see these students as still our students. They're not opting out of the district. They have requirements for whatever reason to have to remain remote, and they're still all our students. So I hope you really think hard and continue to work on that. I think it's very important for them to stay connected.
Well, we see them as that way also, and we will continue to figure out ways and find ways to keep them connected to the school. Again, there'll be some activities they can participate in and some that they will not. So, and I'll be talking to the principals more about those.
Thank you.
Jim, I have some questions.
Yep.
So you notified the parents about Ingenuity. Did that also go out to school committee members too?
I don't know who was on the list. We sent it to all parents. Yeah, you would have, it would have gone to you and Susan, I would think. I think we included you on the list.
Well, I'm fully willing to confess that, you know, I got the email and never saw it. So I'm, you know, given how things are in my business, et cetera.
Well, you and Susan are the only ones who don't get parent email. And I think we addressed that a couple of weeks, more than that, maybe a month ago, because you weren't getting the things that we were sending out to parents.
So this, my second question is, so were we briefed on why you chose Ingenuity? I mean, did you tell us anything about that?
No, I don't think so. We said that there were 4 platforms. I believe we sent you out it was a public link that the Department of Education sent out. But we made the decision internally about which one we were gonna choose.
So, not to be too technical, but so if that's, you know, part of our program, I'm trying to process it. I don't have a question. I'm just wondering why. I don't know if you know what the question is. I'll figure it out.
Maybe the question is, so you chose Ingenuity. What factors went into it? Why did you choose that particular platform?
Well, we needed a platform that had a couple things. Well, first of all, you see in the Department of Ed guidance, they sent out a list and they said, you know, here are the pros, here are the cons. This would be good in a district that has, you know, these conditions. So we used that, had cost was in there. We stayed away from charter schools because they would, I know it's been relaxed, but charter schools are actually different schools. And typically they have to unenroll. That has been relaxed, but still they would actually be enrolling in another school. So that was 2 of the models right there. we needed something that was student driven. We were hoping that we could use some teachers who were going out on medical because they couldn't return to work because of medical issues, to work with those students so that they would have a connection to still have a connection to our teachers, to act as, to do check-ins, to act as tutors for those students. But again, part of the reason we put these surveys out is to see if we can match student groups up with teachers. And so far, it hasn't been very successful. So we needed a plan that first and foremost, that was student directed. And I was clear about this, that we were picking a platform that was student directed. And I was very clear about why we had to pick that. And I was clear about that to this committee on a number of occasions. And so that's what we went ahead and did. We knew that Edgenuity, I had used it years ago. It's changed since then. There are districts in the area who continue to use it and use it anyway. There are districts around us that use the platform. And so we contacted those districts also to see, if it was still a good platform. It's been around for a while. Cost was a factor. We were hoping to use CARES money to purchase this platform, and we have now spent around $220,000 on safety, and we've used all of that money. So that was an issue also. We tried to put that last. Obviously, we wanted to make sure it was something that would work for our students. But again, this is a decision parents need to make. And I don't think there were any surprises here that it would be a student-driven platform. And those are the decisions parents need to make in deciding whether they want to come back to school or not, or whether they want a remote platform. There are not a lot of them out there, and there's some that require teacher input, but we don't have an extra set of teachers. We were hoping to do it, but we don't. And that's the limitations of this. That's the limitations of this whole issue. Certainly if we had 15, 20 teachers that we could use, we would have. So, those are the parameters we used.
Jeff, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
we put it on to the parents.
Can I say something? So I checked my email and I did get that email, Jeff. So shame on me for not realizing it.
I know. You know what? Everybody's getting a lot of emails, Cliff. It's not that big a deal. You know what? Carol has done some work with these two. And I know she's called some of her counterparts in other districts who do the curriculum and instruction piece. Carol, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I just want to go back for a moment to how this unfolded with these platforms. Essentially, the 4 platforms that were given to us are DESE. They were DESE sanctioned, DESE approved. We had one opportunity to take a look at these 4 platforms through a webinar that was about, I'm losing track of weeks and days right now. It was probably about 2 weeks ago now on a Wednesday. And we heard the presenters. 2 of them were virtual academies. One was out in Greenfield. One was Tech Academy. And as Jeff said, they're extremely expensive. They were trying to find out at that point how many, there was a survey after this webinar that wanted to find out which districts were interested in the 2 different types of platforms, largely because these virtual academies have to hire teachers to teach. In their costs, they have teachers attached to these different courses, which run about $300 to $500 per course. They gave discounts of, that made it around $2,500 a semester per child. So cost was a factor, and the fact that they did not have teachers even necessarily in place to handle what might be a volume of schools that chose to go into this. In the webinar as well, and I can share that with the school committee, DESE factored in what might work best for your particular district. So we looked at that, that screen as well to try to say, which one was the best for Berlin-Boylston. So we moved over and looked at as Jeff explained, the two kind of independent student-driven platforms. One was out of Florida, and that involved taking kind of I don't know if you're familiar with Canvas. It's a place to load lessons and courses into. A lot of times I use it, as a matter of fact, for graduate course teaching. You load your curriculum into that. We do not have the people to do that work for the students who are going to be involved in the remote learning platform. Edgenuity has been around a long time. I know Grafton is one of those districts using it. I've talked to their assistant superintendent there about it, as well as others in the cohort that we belong to in Assabet Valley. They're Massachusetts standards based. So one of the things I think you mentioned before made me want to say, the objective of this remote learning platform is that the students will be able, should they choose to do this, should the families choose to move back into the way we're operating a hybrid model, or whether it becomes full in model, that they'll be able to do it as a smooth transition. And we want to be able to set dates, when they can make those choices. So that's something we have to do next. So the other piece is, as Jeff said, we've been trying to contact Edgenuity desperately to test it out, to see, really like what would a typical course look like. They gave us that link that we all have the same link to look at, and that's all we've been given. We know that DESE has, as I said, taken a survey of all of the districts, what we're interested in doing. And so I did put in that we wanted to do Edgenuity. I put in approximately how many seats we would need. And the next step is for them to contact all of the districts involved. The other piece is DESE is offering free training for those people who chose Edgenuity or the other platforms. So what we're talking about now is getting program coordinators within a pool of teaching staff or outside teachers coming in to operate the coordination of the program, essentially, the check-ins with the students, the support for them, monitoring the data that's coming in and the assessments they do. So I think that's everything I know right now. Like I said, this has been a very quick turnaround from the state, and they really haven't given us any more information to date. So I hope that helps.
And one of the issues, and Carol just talked about it, one of the problems with all of these systems is not really the content pieces, because people can usually work around that. It's the technology. It's getting from screen to screen. It's so, as Carol mentioned, one of the things that they do provide is training for, I think they call it in their group, the system administrator, who will be there to help participants as they sort of navigate the technical part of it. And it tends to be the thing that causes the most frustration. Once they're into the content, that's usually not the big deal. It's to get there, it's to move through screens, it's to log on. It's that same frustration of not being able to log on. So they'll have somebody they can contact who's been trained as a system administrator to help with those kind of things, so that it is a smooth transition. Because again, once they get on, these programs are usually self-explanatory. I did get questions from parents about, and more than one, about about the transition. And so I've said the same thing. They use Massachusetts state standards, and they may be slightly out of order, but it wouldn't be much different than, we have kids who transfer in from other Massachusetts state schools. They've gone through the same standards. They may be slightly out of order, but we can usually catch those kids up pretty quickly. That's not the big deal. So there'll be a little bit of a transition, but this is as close as we can get to a smooth transition. So, and I have taken more than a few emails from parents about that. And also parents were concerned that, they hear a lot of stuff. they were concerned that they would have to unenroll from the schools. And so I showed them that that's not the case.
Okay, I want to move us through get us moving through our agenda. Are there any other specific questions from school committee members prior to moving on to our next agenda item? Okay, hearing none. Bob, I'm going to move to you for your item as it relates to the budget transfers and the status report.
Did we want to go over the survey, Jim? The parent survey? That's something.
Yep.
Pretty sure it's on there.
I missed that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
We'll go quick. I know it's been we've kind of had the floor for a while here. So we sent out a parent survey. The goal of the parent survey was, one, to see who was coming back, to see if they weren't coming back, what platform they were going to use. We also wanted to know about ridership, to see who was going to take the bus, because we have to start figuring those things out. So the first page, and Carol, jump in anytime here. It says which school students scheduled to attend. That's pretty self-explanatory. The second, will students be attending school in the fall? We were pleasantly surprised. We had 92%. 92%. So that's, let's see, what is that? 872, 75, and 75 said no. So the next question, the follow-up question was that if you answered no to the previous question, what other option will you be implementing? And we need to know that for a few reasons. So the 86.3 said that they would choose the DESE provided learning platform.
Hang on, Jeff. So 86 point whatever of the
75 responded no. Of the 75 that responded no, 73 responded to this question. Out of those 73, 63 said that they were going to be using the DESE platform.
Thank you.
Okay. It's up in the left. Do you have the version, Susan, that has the numbers laid out on it?
I can't access any version right now because when I just went into the drive, it says to request access for this document.
Oh, okay.
And I had information.
Okay, so, well, let me just give you some quick numbers then.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to put this, Paul has this Google Slides for it.
Yeah, can we put it up?
You can share that screen. Yep, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Paul, are you able to do that?
Sure. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, thanks for doing that because I don't have access to it either.
While Paul is getting the slides up, the thing I wanted to mention about this survey, as much as we're looking at the pie graphs here, this is less about that piece of it. This is kind of I want to say the 1,000-foot or 500-foot view of this. We had asked the parents to submit a survey for each child in coming back to school or not coming back, each child that was enrolled in the district in the year ahead. So this survey represents not families that responded, but students, the number of students. And then what happened after, so we're able to do a Google spreadsheet then, and that's what we did yesterday afternoon, but principals were already on top of this, looking at the students who were included and those who were missing, because they started getting the secretaries to make phone calls to those families. It was about, I figured out about 150 students, maybe less, missing from all of the schools. So they've been gathering that information, and that's helping them to inform their cohort decision making as well. So anyway, that's what we were really looking at. It drove a lot of information that we needed about this platform we were just talking about. We have to send in the 225 grant. We needed to know how many seats approximately we should set aside funding for. transportation, and also the students actually coming back, who they were, and who was staying home, and why. You know, were they going to use the remote platform, or they were going to homeschool, were they going to private school?
So just to clarify, this 947 responses, we're missing 150 on top of that. So this
Approximately. Yeah, if we looked at it as if we looked at it as a total of 1,100 students in the district, and honestly, I'm not sure the exact number at the moment, but so that was about an 86% response from all students.
We're closer to 1,052, somewhere around there.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Were you able to put that up on the screen?
I should.
Yeah, it's up there.
Yes.
Oh, is it? I'm not. What am I looking at? Hold on. Hold on. That's okay. I have it here with me, so.
All right, and so again, in terms of those total responses, Susan, we don't know what our totals are really at this point. So they fluctuate a little because we have students that leave and come in just before school. So what did Paul just say? We're at 1052 right now?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So this is the, if you answer the previous question is no, which option would you be implementing? 63 of the 75 said the DESE model, and 7 homeschool and 3 private school. This is a question that refers to the busing. We have to figure out how many students we can fit on the bus. I think at 50% enrollment, it should not be a problem. And I think our ridership in general is about 50 or 55%. So you can see there that 55.2% said they will drop off and pick up. You can read the numbers. I don't want to.
One of the things I'm curious about is if 63 students opt for the DESE's learning management system, let's say it's even higher because we're still soliciting the remaining students. Let's say there's 75 students who opt for the learning management system. What's the impact on the budget? How do we absorb that?
Susan, it doesn't, so that's a great question. It won't be absorbed by the budget. We're working on it. It's a 225 grant. It's kind of the follow-up to what Jeff was talking about earlier, the CARES grant that we got funding for earlier this year. So Bob and I were just looking at the numbers yesterday, and we've allotted more seats than that as far as that funding. It's a grant funding. Bob, how much was it? $211,050? Boylston has
about 211,000, and every dollar we've basically allocated every dollar of that grant now across many different uses.
And is that grant a given, or is it merit selected?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank goodness.
Yes, they've already communicated the amount to us. We need to fill out an application, say what we're going to use it for, but all districts are going to receive it.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to confirm, I'm pretty sure I read this, and I think we might have talked about it once. The state did make a decision that those students who choose the LMS, the learning management platform, will still be considered as enrolled in our district, correct? So it won't affect,
absolutely.
Budget perspective, but for instance, the 3 students who choose private education will no longer be considered part of. Okay, thank you.
Nor will the homeschool students. If they choose homeschool, they have to unenroll from school.
Meaning, if they choose homeschool but do not take, okay, that's a great question. So meaning if they choose homeschool but do not choose the LMS option, they choose their own learning option, they have to unenroll?
Yes.
And they would also need to complete a homeschool plan that we review. We get a homeschool plan that's approved by the superintendent each year. And at the end of the year, we ask that the parents provide us with some form of progress report or assessment. So there's a whole process to homeschooling. So it's not the, what do they call them? The pods, or what parents are just doing at home by them, just, informally, I guess, groups. I forgot what that's called, but that's not, when you say you're homeschooling, it's, you need to fill out paperwork in the process.
Is that information readily available to parents, right? For instance, tends to be a lot of feedback initially as it relates to concerns around the platform we're choosing, right? So you might have a subject to those parents who start to think about homeschooling, but don't necessarily even know or fully understand what the process of that unenrollment and planning is. Is that information readily and easily available to parents right now for them to be able to, again, have all the information they need as fast as possible to make this decision?
The homeschool network is very, very well developed. They have administrators, they have nationwide attorneys. We don't put anything out on homeschooling, just like we wouldn't put anything out on Clinton Public Schools. They would have to do that research themselves and decide to homeschool. You do get questions from parents asking, about where they would look for curriculum. But once they contact the homeschool network, there are a number of homeschooling curriculum that are available. So they would typically go that route. We don't put homeschooling. We don't send that information out.
How many homeschooling and private school students did we have last year? Do you know?
Christy, if we could get that number for you. I don't know offhand.
I mean, is this roughly similar, or do you see these numbers a little bit higher? You don't. If you're not sure, that's okay.
I'm not sure.
This is based off of our current student body, this survey. So these are, I would think these would be additional.
Well, they might not be. I don't know for sure, so.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. This would be additional.
Saying.
Yeah, that makes
It
sense.
could be both, so I don't know.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Jim, the other thing that to your point, I do see a way we can include that. I think you're talking about just for the moment, and as parents are making those choices, what does homeschool mean for them? Not the process itself, but what will it, like when they say they're going to homeschool, what they're going to need to do, I guess, what that involves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the same time, I believe in the fact that we're putting together our plans as a district, and parents will be making individual respective decisions for their families. But at the same time, back to the idea of these students are still our students and still the kids in our community and families in our community, the people who elected us to put us in these seats. I want to, if whatever we can do to help families have as much information, even if it's just on our website, putting the link to the homeschooling network that Jeff referred to, right? I would have no knowledge, and I didn't even know that about homeschooling prior to this discussion, just plain and simple, right? How that works, right? So I'm just thinking if we can be as supportive as possible in providing as much information as we can to the limit of not adding more work to anybody's workload or, going outside the realm of what our responsibilities are. I just think it might be of value to the community if we can help them gain that information, or at least point them in the right direction. It's just my thought.
I would support what Jim says. Homeschooling's been around for a long time, but people who prior to COVID were choosing homeschooling had thought about this for a while, and like maybe years. And And so they had done the homework, and they knew what the requirements were about, filing a schooling plan and all of that. So if these 7 people are new, they may be saying, oh, well, I'm going to homeschool, but they haven't really understood what that means because they've never considered it before. And so they haven't done the homework. So I think a simple paragraph, like, what does homeschooling mean? If you choose to homeschool, what does it mean? Because it's a pretty straightforward thing. It's less than a paragraph long.
I'll check with Russ before we do this, if that's okay with the committee.
Yep.
Sure.
Right. Paul, do you want to speak to this one?
Sure. Again, pretty self-explanatory of all the folks that responded. There were, I think, about 7 responses that people would need access, and that really just represented 4 families. We did also receive some grant money that will help us fund that. There was a separate technology access grant that we applied for, and we finally got permission to say that we actually received it. And so we will be able to cover at least the majority of the cost for the internet access for these families through that grant.
And this one also, Paul?
And then the last piece of this slide was about how many Chromebooks would be needed to be borrowed from school. Again, in the fall, we were just over 100. I'm sorry, in the spring, we were just over 100. When we sent the original survey out, we were around 190. When we asked people to put their names to it and really come down to a final decision, we're now up around 315 that we're going to need to provide. And again, we're in a situation where we will be able to do that. We're looking at, originally we had hoped when the number was about 190 that the number of Chromebooks that were still left in the school for school use and everybody else would be about the same, and we wouldn't have to impact the numbers that way. Now, given the fact that the numbers are so much higher, that is going to obviously be impacted, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to go with something that's close to 1-to-1 across the district, across all 3 schools. So in the end, we're hoping it's not going to impact what kids have access to in the classroom as well.
Thanks, Paul. I think that's it for the survey. Not a lot of questions, but we were able to gain a lot of information.
Okay. All right. Any other committee member questions as it relates to the parent survey? Okay. Now we can move to item number 2, which is Mr. Conry. You're on mute, Bob.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. So on my report, the first thing I have is just to give you an update on the state aid. We received a communication, all districts received a communication from Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. It indicated that there was a certain minimum, a guaranteed minimum amount we received for FY21 in state aid, Chapter 70 funding. And it's going to be the lesser of their preliminary guidance to us for FY21 or last year FY20's revenue. So for us, it's last year's figure of FY20 state aid, and it's only about 10,000 off from what we budgeted. So we had a concern because there was talk across the state. I don't know what the source was, but given the state's financial constraints, we could see anywhere from a 10 to 20% cut in state aid. So that's not going to materialize, which is very good news for us because the only way to make that amount of money up, which would be about 200 to 400,000, would be staffing cuts. So the $10,000 we've covered by setting up the transportation revolving fund that the school committee approved in June, and we were able to put some money into that fund, which will offset the reduction in state aid. So good news on the revenue front. We don't have guidance on circuit breaker revenue and on regional transportation revenue for FY21. It's possible that the aid for those will decrease a little bit more than Chapter 70, but we get a lot more in Chapter 70 funds, so the impact won't be quite as significant if those are cut. If there's no questions on that, I'll move on to my next item, which is the budget transfers. And we've broken it out by school. And you can see that we've had some significant shifts. I mean, basically, how we planned to run school last year wasn't how we ended up running it because of COVID-19. And so you'll see some significant budget transfers between classifications. We're just kind of talking at a high level. We were able to save some money on administration costs. Some of the increases you see on teaching and instruction, those are actually us making a choice to use more school choice, use less school choice funds, and cover more of teachers' salaries from our general fund. So it's not actually spending more on the district's part. It's us using more of our general fund budget and less of our school choice budget. You might recall when we built our budget, we tend to build our budgets with using an excess of school choice beyond what we take in. So we were able to basically eliminate that structural deficit for FY20 in school choice and level fund school choice revenues and expenses. So that's a big piece of why the instructional costs are up. The other piece is we did have some increased costs for paraprofessional and special education needs at Boylston Elementary. That accounts for part of that increase. And also at Boylston, it reflects some of the contractual increases as we move forward from 3 separate districts to 1 regional district. We did collectively feel it was important to kind of bring the Boylston teachers to parity with the other schools as quickly as we could. And so in FY20, they get half the way there, and in FY21, they are at parity. So that's another piece of the impact. We did save some money on utilities and maintenance costs with the schools closed for 3 months. We did have some savings on benefits and insurance costs. And then in other services, some of the increases, we did make some advanced purchases for personal protective equipment and building supplies and cleaning supplies related to COVID-19 needs. We made those late in the year, and that accounts for some of those increases. So what, and actually one last thing is the out-of-district tuitions for Tohoto were down. We had one student who graduated earlier than, or finished their instruction earlier than was anticipated. So we basically saved on one out-of-district tuition. What I'm asking is, it's an annual requirement that the school committee approve budget transfers. I've presented them in the Google Share Drive for the school committee to see at a summary level for each school, and then there's line item detail in case you wanted to look at detail. So I'm requesting that the school committee approve the budget transfers as presented. And I think that's going to happen later. I think that's a vote later. If there's no questions on that, I just have one more brief thing. Hearing none. So I just wanted to add a little bit to the prior conversations. I mean, there's a lot of been a lot of discussion within the district about, you know, ways to go about the school reopening plan, and that there are constraints, there are budget constraints, and we've spent a lot of money on different things. The online learning platform for individualized instruction will add up to a fair amount of money, personal protective equipment, supplies. We've obtain tents for mass breaks outside. There are going to be some limits to what we can afford within our budget. And we're trying to do the best we can to be flexible and nimble. And we have the grant funds to help too, but there are limits. So, I just wanted to mention that, everybody who's spoken before in the reopening plan, we'd all like to do as much as we can, but there are going to be some limits to what we're able to pay within the budgets that were approved by the towns. That's all I have.
Bob, are there going to be additional transportation costs as well in that list of extra costs?
Not this year. I would be extremely surprised. I'm going to try to be negotiating for a reduction, actually. Based on the survey, what I saw, 55% is planning to take their students in. So if I do some quick math, take out students who are out of district from our numbers and take out students who are in preschool who don't get transportation, I'm just going to round it to 1,000 students. 55% are going to drive their students. So 450 students will be needing buses. Half of those to Tohoto, half to the elementary schools. Will fit within the 25 per bus, unless it's really skewed by town. And I have the ability to, for one of the buses, as a backup plan, do a loop back. And we'd have to work out the logistics of that. But I think that we're also able to do more than 25 on a bus if two siblings are on the same bus. They can sit in the same seat. That's permitted. So I would be very surprised if we're not able to fit in each bus. And I did want to also add that we're going to set up separate routes for Monday, Tuesday versus Thursday, Friday. They've created like a full day route if we were full in person, but we're not going to use those. And we don't want to go to places when students, like on Monday and Tuesday, there's places we're not going to need to know because some of the students aren't there. So we'll be developing those routes separately.
What about, will there be additional costs for custodial staffing?
Yes, there's some OT costs built into the grant that Carol mentioned before, $225 per student. We put some custodial OT costs in there.
What's that mean? A custodial OT?
Overtime. Yeah, they're going to need to work extra. We're going to be disinfecting the building, which is an additional piece of work.
Okay.
Hopefully it's what we've planned is sufficient. We'll need to figure out, if we can save in some other place, if not, but that is factored into what we've planned.
Great, thank you.
I just quickly thought of something. I don't necessarily believe it's a question as more as I think it's a statement, or I guess the question could be, have you thought about this? And I apologize. I can't help for when I think about questions. This might have been a better question on the previous item we were talking about, but we talk about 55%, and I'm guessing that might increase versus decrease as we move forward, of students now being driven to and from school. And I'm sure that the schools, as part of their plans, have thought about what type of traffic and concerns that might implicate. And I know we're doing multiple cohorts, so cut that in half, but still, it still seems like it could be potentially a large number at a very busy time of day. And I can only speak to BES because I've never dropped off or picked up a student at BMS, but I have done it at Tohoto as well. Just during normal times, traffic considerations can be extremely difficult. Say at BES, just from Sewell on to 140 on to Sewell X, Y, and Z. Have we started any discussions with the police departments in town to, just start the conversations around concerns or challenges and the potential of, hey, might help to have some increased visibility from the police during these periods of times, or even if we get to a point where we might need for that hour, the police officer to be doing some traffic type stuff, whether it's the intersection of Sewell and 140 or anything like that. I could just see some potential challenges with that type of stuff. Have we at least started conversations, or has anyone thought to just quickly start thinking about that?
I was traveling and I missed the crisis meeting this morning. I don't know if that was discussed. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that.
We did not discuss it. We, some of the officers from Boylston actually weren't able to make it. So we will have that discussion with them. The other discussion we're having with them is just increased visibility around the schools, because we're planning on having our students out of the buildings more than they usually are out of the buildings. And it's come up, I've had more than one parent ask me about that. So again, it's probably something we wouldn't have thought of if a parent didn't say, you know, are you thinking about having, you know, more police presence out there? So we'll talk to the police about some kind of increased patrols around the building.
Yeah, as well as the training for staff as it relates to, you know, just our other safety protocols that we have in place for, you know, in place for other types of incidents, you know, outside of this type of pandemic, and or, you know, now that I start thinking, right, I can't stop, but and or the impact of the shift in buildings for, say, families who choose to send back students with medical requirements, right? Medical needs, knowledge of the folks maintaining the areas where there might be a student with medical needs, and, you know, that type of stuff, you know, those are just things that I hope we're thinking about as part of some of these plans.
Yeah, one thing I should add is I think it's in Diane's plan, and I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's similar at the elementary schools. It likely may be, except they don't have drivers. I think I know that at least the dismissal schedule at Tohoto has staggered times for dismissal. Are the arrival times that way as well, Diane?
Yes, we're working on the specific times, but yes, we're looking at a staggered arrival as well.
So that will mitigate the traffic flow.
Hopefully, some of it, yes, if everybody follows it.
Well, yeah, certainly, there's going to be a lot of confusion in the beginning, certainly.
Sure.
Right? Going to be, sure. I mean, just look at the start of a year at Tohoto any year. How many emails does Diane have to send to tell people to go a certain direction when it's not even the way we're, so, you know, it's, you know, I'm just thinking even just, you know, whether it's police presence or extra presence to help manage some of that stuff might put parents at ease and provide some, you know, some better feelings for folks as they move back into this, right? So just some thoughts.
Hey, Jim, would you mind if I just went back? There was something I just forgot to mention in my piece. Would you mind if I? It's related to the.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I did want to thank the parents. We have a group of parents who have helped us with the communication on our plans, and so we're going to start our update next week. And usually we just have like my section, Carol's section, Bob's, and we go like that. But we're going to add on that parent section because they're working on some videos and things, just some things, additional things that they think parents would like to see. So they've been working on some things. And so, you know, for now, at least there'll be so their group will have a section on our administrative update.
Jeff, are you going to continue to keep that parent group in place to help with communications and so on going into this?
I would love to keep them on as long as I can, even after this is over. I mean, they've been very good. They have some insights that, you know, we wouldn't have. We don't live in the community. They, you know, they're more in touch with other parents. They really seem to have a good handle on, you know, some of the ways we can communicate. The town hall idea was one of those parents' idea. And so, again, like I said, they're working on this video for parents. And so I'm hoping to keep it on as long as they're willing to stay on.
And is that group named, and are the members and contact information named anywhere on the district site, so parents who are not familiar with who's on that committee could contact them if they had ideas? Or
You know, that's, it's probably was someplace, but we should, that's a good idea. We should probably, if they don't mind, if you're listening tonight and you do mind, please let us know. Well, we can reach out and ask them if they mind.
yeah,
It'd probably be a great idea to put them, their names on the website so parents know where to go. I know they have a parent, like a parent group page someplace, yeah, but it probably should be something on our website. So that's a good idea. We'll do that. We can reach out to them tomorrow.
thank you.
Great idea. Thank you. That was it, Jim. Thanks.
Bob, did you have anything else, Bob?
No, that was all I had.
Okay. So like Bob mentioned, when we get to our business items and we're voting on these, I'll be looking for a motion to approve these as presented during Bob's portion of the agenda. So that's all we'll need from the vote perspective. Okay. I just want to be cognizant of the time. Susan, I'm not sure if it'll be yourself or Cliff who will be doing an update from a policy subcommittee perspective. Obviously, if there's anything you want to add as it relates to ACAB, let us know, because that's the one that we'll be doing a first read vote on per the email I sent to the committee earlier.
Right.
But obviously, I want to try to keep this
Right.
as possible, just in sense of the time.
Yeah, I think the other policies, I provided a document in the policy folder, sort of explaining the blocks of policies where we brought forth for first read. If I think it's pretty clear in that document. It says explanations of the policies, so I won't plan to go over those unless somebody has questions about that long list of other policies that are on first read. So the main one we have to act on, which is sort of breaking protocol, because instead of doing a first read on this, we're going to ask you to vote on this, because this is ACAB is harassment, a student policy on harassment, and it comes from the U.S. Department of Education, and it was originally drafted to impact colleges, but it applies to K through 12 education as well. And it's effective as of August 14th. School committees are required to adopt an evidentiary standard and some concepts I don't fully understand, to be honest. But I wrote to legal, and they recommended that we act on this as soon as possible, and we are, I think it was MASC's draft policy that we have in front of us. And just as a point of reference, the Mass Attorney General, Maura Healey, has joined other states in filing a lawsuit to block the implementation of these regulations. But in the meantime, as of August 14th, we're required to have this policy in place that addresses the issues that US DOE wants to see integrated. So we're asking if you have any questions about this harassment policy. Not that I'll be able to answer them. It's a pretty lengthy policy, but I can try. And in conjunction with this, Cliff, Jim, I didn't realize, and Jim is Cliff as well. Our current policy, JBA, is policy against harassment and discrimination for students. So I think in adopting ACAB, we have to either state that we're suspending JBA, or that this policy is going to supersede JBA until the policy subcommittee has a chance to review JBA and any other harassment related policies in our files.
So yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, questions.
No,
yeah.
I was going to ask that question. What about the other two policies we have in our manual? There's a student harassment one and then a staff harassment one. I just wondered
Yeah.
where this one fit in. So you
This
answered
seems
that
to
question
be-
for me.
This seems to be a policy specifically about students, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody else, or Karen, if you know about it. But this seems to be pertaining to students specifically, it does not mention employee to employee harassment. It mentions employee to student harassment and student to student harassment, which seems most directly related to JBA, Policy Against Harassment and Discrimination for Students. There are some other policies, JICFC, that is about prohibition on student dating related violence that may have some pertinence, and JICFB, which is about bullying prevention. And there may be some others as well. I didn't do a thorough search for where harassment shows up in our policies, but JBA is most directly related to this. Karen, do you have anything to add to this or have any other knowledge of this?
Well, I'm trying to follow which one you were saying was student related, not the new one, the one that you're saying you want to put on hold, right?
Yeah, JBA.
Yeah, because obviously the new Title IX regulations apply to everybody. So I think it may supersede, but I can't tell you that for sure. That'd be something to talk with Russ about.
Okay.
Well,
So are you saying that
can we just approve it and not use the supersede language and do an investigation? Can't we remove the other ones later if necessary?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were in conflict. That was the main.
Yeah. I think we need to do some research on that. I agree with you. Maybe we can do some research and determine that.
Yeah, I think a good strategy is to approve it and then do the homework and see if there's any conflict and address the conflict.
Okay, so we're just approving it, and then at the next meeting in September, we should have more information.
Yeah. I also have a question. There are blanks about who does what in the harassment policy. So if we're approving it and those people aren't named, is that a problem?
Name of district, I'm trying to find where that is. The compliance director, is that?
Yeah, all of that. There's no names.
I only see, I'm not finding where that is. I only see a reference to the name of the district not filled in. But I seem to recall reading something like that, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I can't recall where it is either, but I noticed it in a couple places where it's left blank so you can be specific.
Section 3 on here, Susan.
I'm sorry?
Section 3 on the new policy just has the generic title. It doesn't have the names filled in.
See where it says the Civil Rights and Title VI coordinator, there's no information. The Title IX coordinator, no name. I mean, I don't know. Is that a problem? I probably not, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure why you would have to include the name. Why? Well, what if that person changes?
Our current policy has name and position, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
that would be how, if that position changes, then you'd have to be re-voting on that policy every single time that changed. I mean, I can talk to Russ about it, but I would lean towards keeping it generic with the title. But
let's vote it as it's written for today, because it names the position, and then make that part of what we come back with in September.
I think that's the right strategy. I'd just like to comment that I think it's important to have the names, because if someone feels they want to deal, they've felt harassed and they want to go through the process, they need to know who to contact.
That's right. And this also goes in the student handbook as well. So that's a good example of why that's important. Yeah.
So they would need that policy, Cliff, I mean, you would be able to determine the position that you would contact and could ultimately easily find that individual
Not if you're a student. Not if you're a student. You don't know who the Title IX coordinator is.
We
So-
also print the policy in the student handbooks too. So it's right in the student handbooks if we have names in there.
It has, in my mind, it needs the names because it's the document that might be the way the person gets into the process. If they're feeling harassed, they don't know who to go to, but they notice the policy, they can go and they look in the policy and they can say, oh, I can call this person.
Okay.
Right. But Cliff, are you okay waiting on this till September, or do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to get it approved. Yes.
The other reason this needs to be voted tonight, just as an aside, is that the district has to provide training on this during the first days of, you have it on your agenda anyway, I believe, Jeff, on your back to school training days. The coordinator needs specific training, et cetera. So it has a bunch of things that have to happen right now. Okay, any other questions or discussion on that?
No, I mean, ultimately, this just leads me to a point I was going to make anyways, which is I hate the idea and try to as much dislike the idea of voting on first reads. Obviously, as you can see, the challenge with that. So, I've taken, my process since being chair, which I'm sure was similar to Cliff's previously, was I always lean towards not voting on a first read unless otherwise legal provides me and asks me and tells me we should be voting on that. And then I ask what the consequences of not voting on that is. And again, on this particular subject, Russ's feedback was to vote on this one, particularly because our next meeting especially isn't after the start of school as well. So that was the feedback. But now this is good. You guys brought up a lot of questions. So now I know I have a little more information when I review these with legal, what else I should be asking. So.
Right. And just a point of reference, we did receive this guidance from MASC on August 3rd, and it says effective August 14th from the US DOE. So.
Yeah, Russ wasn't necessarily concerned about that. His feedback all in that is you need to do what's in the best interest of your district, but he was more concerned about the date of approving it, getting it approved before the start of school. He wasn't really concerned about the August 14th date. So just to give you some context to the conversation. Okay, so we will be I just want to confirm that everybody's okay with voting on that as it reads today. And then we'll discuss with Russ after and make the amendments and vote on the amendments to that in our next meeting. Everybody in the committee is good with that?
Yes.
Okay. I just, while we're on the topic, there's one more thing I actually want to cover as it relates to policy subcommittee. I was going to talk about this during communications, but I decided to wait till policy subcommittee. So as part of the work process in my discussions with Jeff and talking about workload and prioritizing and those type of things, one of the discussions was about, particularly right now with the number of emails and requests and things that we're asking Christy to be responsible for. One of the items she's currently doing is acting as secretary during the policy subcommittee meetings. I look back as to my time in policy subcommittee, first with Lori and then secondly with Ed Galt. When I was on, Lori was acting secretary, and then when it was myself and Ed, I was acting secretary for that. One of the things Jeff and I discussed was in an effort to allow Christy to free up some time with the task that she's been given specifically right now, is to release her from being recording secretary of policy subcommittee at the moment. I'm inclined to think to do that, but at the same time, I'm not on the policy subcommittee right now. So I just wanted to get the feedback from Cliff and Susan before I go and make that decision.
Well, since Susan's the chair, that means I'd be the secretary. Oh, man. Sure, I can do that.
know,
Cliff, we can share that job. I don't, let's see what the agenda looks like. We can work it out together. I can do that sometimes.
We can do it.
yeah, and I actually see a lot of value in her, Christy, based on her role too, with the agenda later on and that type stuff. I see some value involved. So, maybe it's a topic that we can reevaluate next year, assuming we're in a normal year and some of the current workload has slowed. And maybe if she feels that that's something else she can pick up, we can reevaluate that discussion. But for the time being, I'm inclined to, ask the policy subcommittee that we release Christy from that responsibility.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know if I.
That also apply to forming the agendas for each meeting? Because Christy's been instrumental in doing that as well.
Well, I think that responsibility would fall to you as the chair. So.
I mean, I've consulted with her, but she, the gazillion policies that we're throwing around.
Yeah, I know.
And she's keeping track of those and slotting those into the agendas and stuff. So I just need to know if I'm going to be doing that, I need to be on the ball. So develop.
I've had a discussion with Christy. She's okay with that. So as we put the agenda together, it's the actual time in the meetings that takes time from her day. So it's the taking the notes. It's the so usually what used to happen, and I think Cliff, you used to do it, is to just get the changes and give the changes to Christy. She'd put them in the agenda. We would discuss what the agenda is going to be.
Yeah.
Give them to her, and she would just put the changes in the agenda. It's just the time during the day in the meeting.
So she would not be attending the meetings.
Correct.
Okay.
We can do that.
So it would be a committee member taking the notes and then just giving them to her and letting her know how it has to be on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Moving to the agenda, business items. Okay. We have a few items to vote on here. Let's take care of item 1 and 2 first. I need a motion to approve the. I'm going to remove the word platform.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a decision to remove the word platform because it did provide some confusion earlier. So I am going to ask for a motion to approve the district remote learning plan as presented through the draft and Jeff's updates this evening.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second it.
Oops. Sorry.
Okay, roll call vote. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Item number 2 is, could I please have a motion to approve the full in learning plan as presented in our reentry draft and by any updates provided by Jeff?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you very much. Roll call. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Item number 3, could I please have a motion to approve the budget transfer approvals as presented by Bob, during our presentation this evening for final fiscal year 2020?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you very much. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Item number 4 is, if you had a minute to just see the quick email that was provided in our drive, but and I don't know if a member from the Meekum family is on our call this evening, but the Meekum family has made a generous donation of a mask for all of the students and staff to be donated to the schools, which if I know Matt, and I expect we're going to get a picture or sort of an idea of what that mask is going to look like shortly, but it's an extremely generous donation, and obviously during this time, it's great to see obviously a family in our community making contribution like this. So obviously huge thanks to them and all that will play a role in that. So does anybody have any questions or comments that they want to make before we take this vote to accept it?
Just thank you to the Meekum family.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so could I please have a motion to accept the donation from the Meekum family of masks for all students and staff?
I'll make that motion.
I heard Cliff first. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Very much. Roll call. Angela.
Yeah, aye.
Susan.
Aye.
Cliff.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Keith.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Item number 5, the Boylston Board of Selectmen and obviously administration offices within Boylston are putting together their committee to participate in their master plan in working with the local areas group in terms of working through that stuff. There was a detailed sort of outline of sort of what the responsibilities of that member of the committee who, and they're asking a representative from all committees to participate in that. Obviously, I lean towards a Boylston committee member participating in that. I'm inclined to appoint myself, but I want to make sure I have an open discussion with the other Boylston members to see if they have any concerns, challenges, or want to just have a quick discussion around me appointing myself to the planning committee, the master plan committee for Boylston. So that's quick. So Lori and Keith, any concerns?
I did not, no.
How's your time looking, Jim? And what are the time demands?
It's a great question. I have the time. I'll make the time. More importantly, the way I look at it is I'll make the time. I think it's extremely important to have a member of the school committee participating in this. I think it's great that they've asked us to participate in this. I think in the effort that we've all made over the last couple of years to increase our visibility and communication and direct relationship with the other boards throughout the town, we did a great job with the budget this year. Both communities get involved, early on and that type of stuff. I think it's a great opportunity for a member of the committee to be part of that. So, yeah, I don't have any concerns from a time perspective, and more importantly, I see it as an extremely valuable use of time. So, but that's a great question.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd be happy to help, Jim. My time is limited, but I'd be happy to help in any way I can.
Yeah, I think like anything, it'll be an evolving. I don't think the master plan is committee. Again, I only know from the outside looking in. I'll have more information and I can update the committee as we move through the process. And there might be an opportunity for all members to get involved at some point too, right? So that might be one of the values. So I don't think it's just. I think this is just me just to appoint someone to get us kicked off here. So.
Okay.
So with that being said, could I have, I don't need a vote on that, right?
No, you don't need a vote.
I don't need a vote on that. I'm appointing myself. So I will be myself as the school committee member to represent the school committee on the Town of Boylston Master Plan Committee. I just assume everything needs a vote. That brings us to our next item on business items in the appointment of someone. So I made mention to this, earlier in the discussion. I think there's a lot of communication going on right now as it relates to getting us in a position to effectively have our next school committee elections. I made mention to this in a previous meeting. With the transition to the region, some changes have been made in terms of election cycles and all that good stuff, and some challenges and things occurred along the way. So we're trying to just resolve some of those issues. Lots of communication going on. I think it's important that we keep this discussions. Again, I think it's a touchy subject, right? Because we want to make sure, as our members of school committee, we help our communities get through this process. But at the same time, there is some, and I've talked to Russ about this, there is some conflict of interest because we are elected officials and it is an election process, and we want to make sure we don't have any conflicts of interest during this process. So effectively what I would like to do, and we'll have a quick discussion as a committee if anybody has any other thoughts, what I would like to do is appoint one person to represent the school committee as the point person as the communication process moves forward. We have some calls coming up. We have some, I'm sure there'll be some documentation and some updates to the school committee that'll be needed. But I think, I personally think the most effective process would be have one point person on that who will be a representative. We regionalize, and this sometimes I think we should behave as a district. So I'm not necessarily in this stance concerned about Boylston versus Berlin. We're going to be on both ballots, so I think it's important to have, one point of contact on this. So, does anybody have any concerns about or questions about me appointing an individual during these conversations? Okay. With that being said, I am going to, after some previous discussion, I'm going to appoint Cliff to represent us throughout the election process. And, really one of the major drivers behind that is Cliff will not be, as of today, will not be running for re-election when we get that process going. And I think that eliminates potentially some form of conflict of interest. So I think it's a benefit for us to have someone who, plus his length of experience as well, going through a number of these elections. I think he can help us and be a good representative for us. So any concerns about or questions about me appointing Cliff to do that?
No.
All right. I will make the appointment. Cliff, I'm appointing you to represent us during that process.
I have one request to the chair, and that is if you would send out an email, hopefully tomorrow, to all the relevant parties, letting them know that I'm the person who will be the representative from the school committee, so that when I call them or reach out to them, they're going, who are you and why are you doing this?
It'll be one of the more happy things I will do tomorrow is to take that off my plate. It'll be one of the first emails that I send. So that,
So Cliff, I assume that we'll hear something about the resolution of this in the September school committee meetings.
With any luck, and if fortune goes our way, yes, you can. That's the goal.
That's great. Thank you for taking that on.
Okay. All right. The remainder of our items, 7 through 20. Oh, no, we do still have to do the number 7. I apologize. Per our discussion on policy ACAB under harassment, And as presented during that discussion during our policy, could I please have a motion to approve policy ACAB as stated today with the intent to review the outstanding items in our next meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay, now the remaining items under our business items 8 through 20 were policy first reads. Any questions before we move past that? Okay, so those will be voted on during our next meeting, which is September 15th. Any?
Second day of school.
That's very true. Any other items or discussion points for this evening before we adjourn? Hearing none, could I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Angela?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
Cliff?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well.